Thanks, everyone. Most people in this slide, they say what company they represent, but I'm kind of in transition right now. So just put that I'm the head of the San Francisco Atlassian user group. But how many people in here have ever used labels in Confluence? All right, that's definitely more than half of the group. How many people here have used the content by label macro to tie that in? So about half of those who have used labels have used the content by label macro. So the one thing I want to go through and teach you guys today is for those who haven't used a content by label macro or haven't used labels at all, how to use those. It's a very simple tool that you can use to help bring information together. So one of the biggest issues in Confluence or in any wiki is just how do I find the information I'm seeking? And so two basic common approaches. One is to search. Sometimes search can be successful, but if you're not sure exactly what you're looking for, you don't know exactly what to search for. So sometimes you may be going through and doing a search and might not be able to find what you're looking for exactly. So for instance, I have an example right up here, 3.0 release. I want to find everything that has to do with my 3.0 release, and it'll bring up a bunch of pages, but you might not know exactly where the information you're looking for is in which of those pages. The other one is actually just navigating through the pages. You might say, if I want everything to do with the 3.0 release, I have to go into this page, drill down to this page, drill down to this page, and actually find it. So that's really difficult because it's really tough to enforce standards. So you have to make sure that everyone structures all of their pages in Confluence in the same exact way. In addition to that, you might be searching for information that might span across multiple pages. So one way to actually deal with this is to preemptively answer a question. So if you know ahead of time that someone's going to say, hey, I want to know all of the information related to my Google Analytics news reports, or where can I find all design documents for our application architecture? You can kind of answer those questions beforehand by structuring a page that contains that information. And I'm going to go through one example of how I've used this in the past, and that's going to be where can I find all information related to a specific software release cycle. So the inflexible approach, which I tried first, was actually just placing all the pages with the related content under a parent page. So you might have information about weekly demos, the retrospective, supports, information from support on what they want in the release, design documents, requirements and specs, use cases, and all of that. So you can put all of that information as a child page. But there's an inherent issue with doing that. When you go through and structure things that way, obviously each page can only have one parent. So for instance, what happens when you have a feature whose development spans 2 release cycles? Where do you place that page? Also, as you go through and change the priority, you may be going through moving in, de-scoping, and all that type of stuff, and you'll get into a scenario where you're going to be moving pages around all the time. And so, so that approach is pretty inflexible. So the flexible approach is to put information where you want it to live on. For instance, a design document or functional specs. You don't want those to live somewhere that's going to be just related to a release, because that information is very useful beyond the life of that release. So organize your pages per business unit, such as product management, support, development, QA. So all their non-time related documentation and pages, place them under child pages of product management, support, and so on. And then what you can do is you can use labels in the content by label macro to pull in all pages related to a release cycle. So for instance, let's create a page called Release Cycle 3.0 as a child page of a page called Release Cycles. And that page is going to contain all the information related to that release cycle. So it may contain an overview of what's in the release, key dates when code freeze is, the team members, so if you split up your release into multiple teams, JIRA filters if you want to use the JIRA issues macro, and then use a content by label macro to pull in all of the related pages that contain, let's say, design documents and functional specs and use cases. So for instance, the first thing you could go through is, like I said, overview. of features, goals, and initiatives for the release, important dates such as when you're going to kick off planning, when you're going to have contract meetings, code freeze, release dates, team members and the focus for each team. We would go through and actually have lead roles and rotating roles. So we would have a build manager that rotated each release, and we would put who is going to be the build manager for that release. As well as, like I said, using Jira issues, whether it be a link to a filter or whether it be using the Jira issues macro. So, for instance, like I said, placing pages under each of the business segments. So under product management, you can have product feature requirements. And let's say in this one we have requirements for some really awesome new feature and updated requirements for some other feature that's going to go into beta. And so you're going to go through and actually structure all of your requirements under product management. And then also for that release 3.0 page, you can put time-sensitive pages, such as we would go through and do a demo every single week after we pushed a test. And so we would create pages that when we went into the demo, you would go in and say, this is what I'm going to demo today, have links right to, or URL to your website that you would go in and actually show off what you did. Same thing, we would have retrospectives, and throughout a release, people would add notes to the retrospective page because they would forget if they didn't put those down. So by the time we got to the retrospective meeting, all the things that were on their mind for the release was already added to this page. So now the key thing here is getting authors to actually add labels to their pages. For example, support might have a page and say, this is our plans for what, our priorities for the release and what we want to get into this release and all that. And we could have them add a label, BPE for best product ever _ 3-0. And so that says this is related to this release, to the 3.0 release. And then let's say we add the keyword support, so you know that this has to deal with support. Then when you go to the release page, you can actually use the content by label macro, and you can actually, when you use that macro, you can actually you could say, I want everything that just has this one label, or I can say, I want everything that has these 2 or 3 or 4 labels. So for instance, under product management, you can say, I want to pull in all pages that have a keyword BPE _ 3-0 and also have the keyword product. So you can see up over there at the right that there is the actual wiki markup for the content by label macro. And underneath it, you can see it pulls in those 2 documents that I showed you earlier that are related to this release cycle. The other nice little thing is this isn't something that's going out to customers. It's not a customer-facing website. It's just internal. There's no harm at all, no shame at all in actually putting some instructions. So you can even say, like I said over there, labels, BPE _ 3-0 and product. So people can see how those pages showed up there and why they show up. And so here is a finished example of the best product ever, 3.0 release. And you can see, like I talked before, there's an overview, key dates, links to Jira issues, each of the teams that are working on the release, and you also have the content by label macro that's going through and pulling in related pages. So it's pulling in related requirements, each of the demo pages, each of the design documents, and it's the plan from QA, and it's actually going in also lead roles, rotating roles, and so it's using that content by label macro to pull in all the related pages from within Confluence. So that is basically it. So thank you very much. Any questions? Does anyone have a question at all related to, in the back?
Does it work across spaces as well, or does it have to do all the pages have to be in one space?
Yeah, the content by label macro, you can say whether or not you want it to use the current space, which is called self. So you can say, I only want it to pull in pages under this space, or you can just leave that blank, or you can actually put a list. So you can actually tell it what spaces to pull it in from, whether it be itself, whether it be multiple spaces, or whether it be all across Confluence. Yep.
Is there any way to have any kind of either checkboxes or drop-down lists for the labels? Because, in your example, like BPE
Yeah.
You know, if someone puts in BPE 3.0, without, the correct thing, it's not going to show up. So how do you standardize that?
Right. Well, for starters, you can't use a dot and a label. But I understand exactly what you mean. The best way to do it is actually just put, like, under documentation on the right, you can see that little info macro, and it tells you, please add, your labels here. So it's just, this is a single spot you go for the release. There's that information that says, please add these labels in order for them to show up on this site. So I guess this page is your single source of truth that says, use these labels. So someone could make a mistake. If you wanted to, you can go through and kind of run a little audit and see if anyone missed anything. A lot of times what I noticed what happened is we'll be going through planning meetings, and someone will say, oops, I had a design document I wanted to show, it's not showing up here. And we'll go and they forgot to add the label. And so it was more that once we came time to start talking about designs, they would realize, we would say, go to this page, link to it from here. We wouldn't say go straight to your actual page. We would say, come here, link to it from here. And they would go here, go to click on the link, it wasn't showing up. And so that's kind of how they found out. And one more?
I was just going to add to that, though. I think there's an automatic lookup with the labels. You guys just start to type and actually keep who it is.
Right. Unless you're the very first person to add the, the label for that release. Yeah, exactly. There's the lookup where it starts to do label suggestions. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.